Welcome to the EmQuartier. So this is one of the newer malls built in Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand, of course. I read up on it, and it shows that it opened in 2015, which is not too long ago, and it's like right across from the Emporium, which was built or opened around 1997. That's a while ago. This is a very beautiful mall. It has like lots of plants, trees for people who like, you know, to see plants, trees. Like you go in the botanical garden. Wow, you will love this. And when you have lots of plants around, that means you have a lot of clean air, right? Because plants would absorb like carbon dioxide that we breathe out, right? And put oxygen back into the atmosphere. Isn't that beautiful? It takes in carbon dioxide to do its chemical work, and then it lets out, it releases oxygen. So there's EmQuartier right there. So that's a great combination. So you have very good air at the EmQuartier. I always like plants. I remember when I used to go work in, not go, but when they used to send me out, I used to work with the USDA, and years ago they would send me out like when they had the fruit fly like invasions, and they would send me mostly to the Los Angeles area. There are other areas too, but for some reason I never went to the other areas. But anyway, and I would have to go to like nurseries and so forth. When I say nurseries, the ones with plants, not with babies. And I would see all these different beautiful plants. And I always love those, you know. Where I live, for example, I used to try to like grow plants, like in the living room, but it's very, very hot in here. The heat during the winter would kill the plants. So the only thing that, the only type of plants I probably could grow in here would be like cactus, the type you find in the desert. Yeah. And I don't want that. I don't want to have, cactus or cacti around my living room. That doesn't look good. I like green plants, green leaves, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So the lady in the video here with me, Pla, I know a while back, I think since maybe like 2004 I spoke with her, maybe around 2005. So let's call it like 20 years. So that's a long time to know somebody, because most time you know people, and it's kind of like fly by night, kind of like ephemeral, where you see something and it's gone. It doesn't last long. Well, so I happen to know how. 20 years is a long time to know somebody. So when you know somebody that long, even if you get angry with them, you don't just you don't just drop them like that, because you know them so long. So you're more willing to accommodate any kind of things that might pop up, any kind of differences in opinions and so forth. So there we are walking into EmQuartier. Really beautiful in there. Air conditioned too. And if you've been to Bangkok lately, it's scorching. It's like, I would say like 93 degrees Fahrenheit just about every day. Yeah, just about every day. And the day we were there, that was the 5th of, Friday the 5th of January 2024. And it was scorching. I think 93 degrees, that's probably about maybe a little over 30 degrees Celsius. You know, for those in use the Celsius scale. In America, we still use the Fahrenheit scale. For some reason, I guess people are too lazy to convert, but you know, in science class, they use Celsius. So it's easier for people like in Europe and Asia to understand when they see that number, Celsius. They can kind of relate to the temperature. And also, much of the rest of the world tend to use the metric system. we don't use the metric system in America, except if you go to school, you're in high school, you're in science class, then yeah, you use the metric system, which is a much more easier system, divided by tens, right? Like deci for 10 and so forth, millimeter, decimeter. We still use imperial system. The imperial system more likely came out of England. So we use the foot. I believe maybe the king put his foot down, so to speak. And then that's 12 inches. You know, so we use the foot. It's like, where you get that name from? Foot. Yeah, that's what I believe it was. Like, he put his foot down, so to speak, and measured it, and he got 12 inches. So that's the imperial system. For distance, we use miles. I believe in England they still use miles, even though they went over to the metric system for like measurements and so forth, but and weight. But for like distance driving, they still use miles. As a matter of fact, there's a British guy. He has a YouTube channel. It's called 8 Miles from Home. And the reason he said he named his channel that because his car broke down like 8 miles from home. So 8 miles from home, here in New York, you need to drive another like maybe 30 minutes in traffic. 25 minutes to reach 8 miles. So the British still use the measurement for distance, whereas like in Europe and Asia, they use what do you have there? They use the kilo or kilometers or kilometers, right? Kilometers or kilometers, and that's the distance they use. So here in America, we still stuck in the imperial system, and we still use the Fahrenheit scale. So you're looking inside the EmQuartier right now. It was Christmas. You still have these trees up, these Christmas trees. They look so beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Okay, that I'm using the Facio S6, I believe it is, the gimbal, and it's been giving me problems sometimes, spinning around and so forth. So the EmQuartier, I don't know, but I think it's the most beautiful mall in Thailand. You know, I may be wrong, but once you get out of Bangkok, the other bigger city would be Chiang Mai, And I don't think you have any mall like that in Chiang Mai. So you're stuck in Bangkok. And I don't want to say it's the most beautiful mall in the world because I haven't really traveled to all these different places. But I'm gonna do a check after I finish editing this video and see what are the most beautiful malls in the world and see what they come up with. But I think this mall here, EmQuartier, is one of the most beautiful malls in the world. And I believe that's a fact. And the fact is just having those gardens and those plants, those trees and all that stuff, you know, where you breathe in that good oxygen. Remember, plants give out oxygen. They don't give out air. They give out oxygen because through the process of what they call photosynthesis, they use carbon dioxide and light to make energy so that they can grow and feed themselves. And in the process, one of the byproducts, one of the chemical byproducts of photosynthesis, you know, using carbon dioxide that we breathe out, is oxygen. So, I mean, that's really great. You can't ask for anything more. You're getting pure oxygen coming out of plants. So this is the place for you. So if you suffer from COPD, one of those respiratory illnesses, you would love this place, because believe me, you'll be able to breathe some real oxygen coming out here. So there we are, Skinny Licious, that place. I don't know what's that. This Skinny Licious, maybe cakes. No. So let's see. It's so big here. It's hard to know where. It says out. Notice one thing. They have a lot of the signs are in English, so you're not confused. So because as you travel around, you know, like, you know that, like, if you board any international flight, right, they tend to use English and the language, the local language or the language of the country. That's what they tend to use. And one of the reasons for that is, in order to be a pilot to fly international, you have to know English. So that's one of the agreements they came up with. And I don't know where it started, but we know that the airplane was invented in America, right? So maybe that may have something to do with it. And in America, the main language is English. Not the official language, but that's the language the laws are written in and so forth. And where we got that language from? From England, of course. So that gives us the advantage. At the same time, the countries that tend to be less bilingual tend to be countries like England, you know, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, right? Canada. Canada has French, and the only reason they have French is because the French part was part of Canada, and then it was taken over. That's the only reason. But they're not really bilingual, so to speak. They coexist with the French, an archaic type of French, but not the modern French. So they're not really bilingual per se. If you go to Toronto and meet the average person from Toronto, they're not going to be speaking French. They don't care to. So one of the advantages with these other countries is that, okay, in order to accommodate and coexist with tourism and so forth, or you're going through an airport, is that they use English. So there's no real like incentive for people from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and those English-speaking countries like America to learn foreign languages. None. You see? None. Because if you're a pilot and you're flying international, they use English. When you fly to like Tokyo, Japan, or what have you, or Beijing, China, the controllers, the air traffic people, they speak in English. You know, I know one guy who works for Qatar Airlines. He said one of the problems he has when he goes to China is they would speak in Chinese, and as they speak into their local people landing, and he said that kind of throws him off. You know how they do that. But the fact is, the main language they use, the language they use to communicate anyway in the world, when you land in an aircraft, is in English. So that's why you tend to see English all over. You know, you see like here in this mall, you see English. You don't see French. You don't see, and French is a common language. French and Spanish. They're common around the world, but when you're traveling, if you go to Japan, you're not going to see at the train station, you're not going to see a sign in French or in Spanish. You see one in English, because it's understood that if you're going to travel international, you need to know some English, because if you go to Bangkok and you want to get on the Blue Line train or what have you, and you speak to the clerk most likely ain't going to understand you if you speak in French. So that's when you need to know English, because chances are the clerk at the station on the Blue Line will know English. So people who speak English get an advantage traveling around the world. And that's true. And there's no incentive to really learn a lot. So this video, this is in like 3 parts. This is the first part, so I'll catch you in the second part.